Hi, everybody. Great to be here. Back on Canadian soil. Traveling's it's a lot of travel. A lot of travel is everywhere, all over the world. We're going all. It's everywhere. It's all over the world. It's like you get a plane ticket, and you fly all over the world. Then you get home, and you're like, it's so nice to be home. Like seeing the world is incredible, but you get home and you're like, it's so nice to be back. Portugal, Vegas, more travel coming up. Apologize for the lack of shows. We're revamping and retooling, and we're going to come back in the fall. We'll talk about that today. Not just talking about that today. We're also going to talk about the Las Vegas Golden Knights becoming Stanley Cup champions 6 years into their existence, embarrassing every franchise like the Toronto Maple Leafs for not having done jack squat in the last, half a effing century. So there's that. We're going to talk about Trumpy because he got stiffed, didn't he? Yeah, he did a little perp walk. Lachlan said no perp walk's never going to happen. And, of course, media is imploding all over the country, specifically here in this beautiful country. Bell Media, big layoffs today. And we have a show for you. Please welcome back to the program my friend and yours, Mr. Lachlan Cross, 957 Cruise FM in Edmonton. Nice to see you, sir.
I said, Dean,
yes.
I said he's never going to jail.
You knew when we were going to do the show that I was going to bring that up. And
he's still not going to jail.
You said he would never do a perp walk. He would never get arrested.
No, I didn't say that.
That's exactly what you said.
No, he will never, ever be behind bars. And it's best if everyone who needs that in their lives, and this is one of the more interesting times that we live in right now, because people, I talked about this the other day, people that are on the left that hate him, they desperately want him to go to jail.
Yeah.
They need it. They wake up every day. They're on Twitter. They're like, why isn't he in jail yet? It doesn't make any sense. And the people that support him, his crazy lunatic followers, they want him to go to jail.
Yeah.
Now, they won't admit it, but they really need him to go to jail too. Why? Because that will solidify the belief that they have in the world that we live in right now, that everything's corrupt.
Oh, that he's just a political prisoner and none of the stuff he did was legit. And if he goes to jail, it's just because it was a heist. They pulled a political heist on Donald Trump because that's the narrative, right? And Donald Trump was like yesterday, he was all over it. We'll get to Donald Trump in a minute. Yesterday, he's all over it. And he's like, this is the worst rigged thing. And he's going on about it.
So they all want him to go to jail too.
Yeah, totally.
We can start there. Yeah, we can start there. Why does everybody want him to go to jail, whether you agree with them or disagree with them? That's the beautiful thing about Donald Trump. Here's the other thing.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now.
Yeah.
There is not a single human being, okay? Not a single human being that if they get arrested, either wrongly or rightly, that I am standing in front of some courthouse protesting that arrest. I'm telling you right now. If my wife got arrested, I'd be like, hey, you're on your own, honey.
Yeah, he did some stuff. I'm the exact same way. If a relative of my son, he got popped a few years ago for doing some stuff he shouldn't have done. And he's like, can you come bail me out? You know what I said to him? You're going to have to go through this one on your own. Because a couple times where he did some stuff. And he's like, are you serious? I go, yeah, man, go through it. Like a man, you got to go through it. If you're a man, you go through it. And like you, I'm firmly convinced that he did all of the things that he's been
absolutely doing. But I think that's where we need to start in the investigation of mankind and where we're at right now as a society. How is a man like Donald Trump, whether you like him or love him or hate him, whether or not you agree with him or disagree with him, why does everybody want to see this man go to jail?
Because he's guilty.
That's going to perplex historians forever.
Yeah, they'll be so confused going, it's amazing that he had so many supporters that actually wanted him to go to jail while everybody was protesting against him to go to jail. It's like everybody wants a guy to go to jail, but it's because he's guilty as F. That's why.
Before we bring in our guest and talk about radio, you first off, you missed something I did at the beginning of the show.
Probably.
I said, let's talk.
About?
Bell.
Oh, Bell Media. They had a bad day. Didn't go great.
So anyway, I just slipped that in there to be a dick.
No,
but I do want to thank you for getting rid of those obnoxious headphones.
Yeah, they were too big for my head, and now they don't work. I took them to Portugal because we had a big business trip to Portugal, and we were doing some business over there with
Yeah.
Clancy World. We'll talk about that another time.
Yeah.
And apparently, you can't drop them in the water.
Yeah. Well, thank God you got rid of them because they were starting to annoy me, and I just didn't know how to. None of us, everyone who watches, everybody involved in this, didn't know how to tell you to get rid of the. Not only that, the foam on the sides of them was falling off and at times sticking to your head. Like,
well, you know
have
who?
a piece of black mark here on your
I know,
forehead.
all over my face. I'd walk around with it like a hunk of black on my ear. You know who else hated all that equipment too? Was our guest, who actually does all of our podcasts for us. Please welcome from the Sound Off Media Organization, Mr. Matt Cundill, old radio dog as well. We got 3 old radio dogs. I was doing the math in my head. I think we got like 85 years of radio between the 3 of us. Is that about right? I'm 21-ish, 20. What are you, Matt? Like, were you 25 years in radio? Is that correct?
To the day.
To the day. Yeah. Like you left 25 years of the day. You went into that industry. Is that correct?
I was involuntarily retired.
Oh, you're kidding. You got fired.
I went in. I said, 25 years. Let's see what this day's like.
And Loch, how long you been in radio? What,
25 years? You ran out of rope, eh? That's funny. I'm just doing the math. I officially got into radio in May of 1994. But I had been doing like campus radio and stuff like that. And I was working part-time while I was going to radio school from 91 to 94 in Vancouver. So if technically my first paying job would have been 94. So I'm closing in on, 30 years.
Wow. So 29, well, let's just go with 30. Round it up. 30, that's Cundill's 25, I'm 20. So if I'm to do the math correctly, 30 plus 20 is 50, plus 20 is 70. So between the 3 of us, we have 70 years of experience in radio. Now, today was interesting.
Which is remarkable based on who's sitting here.
Yeah. Who would have thought I'd have the shortest runway of all of us? Oh, well. But something happened today that kind of shook the world. It shook me. Matt and I have talked about it. Lachlan and I have talked about it. I got like 10 phone calls this morning from people. I've already had 2 people ask me for jobs. But Bell Media basically just said, fuck it. We're out. Not interested. We hate the business. This is from the Star. Bell cut 1,300 positions, closing radio stations.
Careful. Let's be careful. They're still fairly entrenched in radio with the other 70 plus or 80 stations that they have.
No,
they dumped some stations.
Well,
I don't think it necessarily means
but it's not. But not like in the traditional past where radio companies like, hey, listen, we got to do something, and they cut costs or they get rid of certain people. And I want to kind of go to Matt about it because Matt is really tied into still the broadcast community. I'm not. I don't care. But Matt does a whole bunch of stuff. He's like rehab therapy. He takes people out of broadcasting and he puts them into podcasting, and he gives them a future and he gives them a business. That's what Sound Off has been doing. But Matt, I kind of want to start with you because you and I have lots of conversations about the health of that industry, about the health of business, the health of radio. You and I have known for a long time, as has Lachlan. I mean, there are pockets where radio stations and companies actually do a really good job. Harvard would be one of them. Lachlan's company that he works for truly believes in the medium still. But this was gargantuan because it wasn't just Bell laying off 1,300 people, which is 6% of their workforce today, which is fucking massive. And their earnings.
Is that the biggest firing to date?
Yeah.
At Bell?
Yeah.
Matt?
It's the biggest media call in the history of the country.
Yeah, and I think significant because they kind of laid off the actual stations this time. So we go back to 2021, which was sort of the first glut of where sports radio stations got shuttered. They let go of Winnipeg. I think Calgary was a station they got rid of. Vancouver. They left Edmonton. I think Hamilton got shuttered as well. And they turned those into a funny, basically playing comedy. And that's very inexpensive because you don't really pay the comedians anyway. There's no residual rights to have to pay comedians for playing their work on the radio. And if they do have to pay, it's probably very, very little anyway. It's cheaper than playing music. And here we are 2 years later and a few months, and we're kidding. We don't even want the stations, and they literally are turning them off.
So they're closing down. They're selling 3.
Yep.
And they unplugged
6.
Yep. Like shut 6 down. Turn them off.
Almost,
they no longer
almost
exist.
Unimaginable, almost an unimaginable
insane.
thing. Like in this business, when you hear Matt or Loch, like when you guys hear that they just shut radio stations off, I don't know which ones they shut off yet. I think they shut off Edmonton, 1260. Colin's in the chat right now talking about it. They just walked in and just said, fuck it, we're going to shut it down. Yeah. It's almost unimaginable. What makes it so, why are we so shook by it and the rest of the world is not? Maybe it's because we thought this was an industry that was supposed to stick around, Matt?
No, I think a lot of people are shook by it.
Radio's powerful. We grew up on it. You know, if you're in Winnipeg, 1290 is gone. 1290 had a music signal. A lot of people grew up listening to that radio station. Calgary, 1060. I remember, it was mixed 1060 at one point.
Yeah.
They were playing, I think they were playing some alternative back in 1994 on that
I
station.
think Brother Jake got his start back on 1060.
1260 in Edmonton.
Rick
1260. Yeah, 1260 in Edmonton was CFRN. That was a legendary. Those are legendary call letters. So yeah, it's a lot of this is tied to the past. And listen, I want to sit here and bang as hard as I can on this company and for doing this to AM radio, but I wouldn't even go buy an AM radio station. What would I do with it? And I find it really, listen, Dean, we have enough money. We could go buy a couple of these things and we could put all our podcasts on it and play it, but we wouldn't do it. So, is shutting down these radio stations that crazy? Bell might have just run the math. And I think the math kind of goes like this. It's going to cost this much to run the transmitters. We're only getting this much return of investment on it. It doesn't add up. We're out. I think it's as simple as that.
Well, and that's the thing. It is. A couple of things they got going for him. And
so
I want to talk about it.
You're suggesting it's about money?
Yeah, let me get through this. They had an earnings report come out today, and they're down. Bell's down, their profits are down, everything's down because they're a shit organization.
I feel so sorry for them.
Yeah, not at all.
Like I'm crushed by the fact that they're losing some millions.
Yeah,
this $1 billion company.
But it is the temperature not because listen, the good people lost their jobs today. So I don't want to shit all over those people, but we're home. When you come here, info@crier.co. If you need a job, you want to talk about what you're doing, you want to do content, let us know. That we when we hear stories like this where radio stations, like literally a company that owns a whole bunch of radio stations, like the most radio stations in this country, just said, screw it, we're just going to shut it down because it's cost prohibitive to run it. As Matt said, transmitters, electricity, AM signals, dead technology. It sounds like shit. Real estate is more important. Absolutely. The real estate that these transmitters sit on are worth so much more than the ability that they have to broadcast now because no one listens to it anymore. Anything's on demand. So here's a question I would ask, and I'll start with you, Loch.
People listen to those stations.
Well, hang on. I know they do. I know they do. Well, especially in smaller markets. And I'm not calling Edmonton a small market, but the idea behind getting a license back in the day was you had to serve the community. That was part of your license, right? You had to serve the community. Now they just fucking shut it off. So they don't care about the community. But here's the question I would ask both of you. Loch, I'll start with you, and then we'll go to Matt because I'm interested in the subject. Is this a lack of foresight on behalf of these companies because they're still selling these products that they hate and that they're just shutting off? Is this a lack of foresight? Is this progress? Did they get outrun by progress? Did they get ambushed? Was there no one in that industry to actually telegraph the fact that, hey, listen, everybody's going to be online? And I'll share a story with you after about how I telegraphed that and we've telegraphed that. But in your opinion, Lachlan and Matt, whose fault is it? What do you point at?
So for me, I look at these radio stations from the perspective of being involved in them for a number of years. And we've been cutting back and consolidating on every level at radio for a long time now. And when big business took over and bought up the majority, the lion's share of the radio stations in the country, they started cutting back and everyone just started following suit. And the more they cut back, the less talent there was, the less listeners. It kept going that way, right? And so I think the issue is when you make it about money and you don't make it about people, and people are terrified to do their jobs and stressed out, the product suffers. And I think they did it to themselves. Big business has killed radio. Now, and again, I think that needs to be said out loud, because a lot of people are like, no, the internet killed her. No, listen, radio was surviving and is still surviving, maybe not thriving, but is still surviving every death knell. Every time they ring the death knell bell for radio, it kept plodding along. Christ, when they invented cassettes, they said that it was gonna kill radio. When satellite came along, it said it's gonna kill radio. It never killed radio. What's killing radio is the lack of people in it, the lack of good quality people to make the product worth listening to, and the lack of time to adapt the products to the changing world that we live in. Because radio should be doing exactly what podcasting is doing, and pushing their signal, not just out on a transmitter, but out on the internet. And a lot of smart people in radio saw that and have been doing that and working towards that. We were too slow at it because we got hatcheted. Yeah. And listen, I work in a building. There's very few people left in there, right? And all you have time to do is just keep your damn show on the radio. That's it. Yeah. And that's every building in the country. There's nobody. And the other problem is there's no training grounds anymore for radio, right? No. There's nobody out there that's like blazing a trail because they got a chance to do a show midnight to 5 o'clock in the morning in Hamilton.
It's not an attractive industry anymore because of all the things that you just mentioned. Like, you can talk to people about getting into the industry. My son is in the radio and television program at a university, and he's going obviously all television and then digital media now. He's kind of streamed into that thing. And we had a conversation like last year when he decided to get into the program. He's like, I think I want to do what you do. I'm like, no, you don't, because there's no future in it. So you got to pick something else. And he's like, well, I want to do the program. No. He's like, I want to do the program. And so we went down and we figured out the program, and I talked to the teachers and the university professors. And I'm like, are you going to expose him to new media? Like, are you going to expose him to the stuff that we do? And he's like, yeah, dude, it's all going that way. Like, there's very little radio in the radio and television communications program anymore. It's all about new media. It's all about writing, creating content. And we're kind of leaning on the process of radio. And to that point, Matt, you're not just an evangelist for podcasts. Obviously, the Sound Off Podcast Network is one of the biggest in Canada. You're our podcast guru at Crier Media, crier.co. Everything you see, best practices, all goes through Matt. We were really fortunate to work with you. You and I, along with Lachlan, separately have had a lot of very honest conversations about, this space. And you give a lot of conversations and keynotes at conferences about what people needed to do or still need to do to be successful from traditional media, in this case radio, and getting into that digital space. So you're able to kind of see the perspective from another arena, because you're not in it like Lachlan. But what is your take, not just on what Bell Media shutting off viable radio stations that make money, not as much as they'd like, but that do make money? What does it say, and what does it say to you? And what happens next? Because that is the burning question for a bunch of people in the industry, and some people trying to get into an industry, or they're just putting up white flags saying, stop, we're done. It's over. It's finished.
Oh, they gave up on radio long ago. I think you look back to 2021, there was a round of cuts at sports stations, and most of these, and actually at the stations that have been shuttered right now. Where did these people go? They came to us. There's people out there in Calgary. Dean Mulberg went and started, a podcast and a YouTube page. I know in Winnipeg, I think it was Andrew Patterson, Hustler. He started his own. They're all making livings doing it, and they went and took all the radio listeners with them. And so then they had to flip the formats, and now here they are. They're out. They're completely out of the business. And I'm not sure if it was the sports that got started. I think they found that the overhead on running these things was just a little bit too much. Vancouver, BNN, that's a business station. It says BNN 1410 and Funny 1040. That's two stations in Vancouver that are going to be gone. And London's News Talk 1290. Well, I'm sorry you couldn't make any money on any of that stuff in those markets. But when I look at Winnipeg, 680 CJOB is still a top 3 radio station. So I don't want to hear that you can't make the radio work for you or that you can't have any success on the AM band. That's absolutely not true. Maybe it doesn't add up for a great return for your shareholders, but this is a business that is predicated on getting a license, serving the public. They're public airwaves after all. I think they should be refused to return the licenses, and I think they should be forced to just let them expire or pass them on to somebody else. I think there's public responsibility when you go before the CRTC to do. If they don't do that, then what is the point of the CRTC? Who, by the way, 50% of the blame is on them, because you know what they did on radio since 1999? Sweet fuck all. They've done nothing for radio since 1999, whenever it was that they last did a radio review. They sat and did nothing. The radio companies,
they did a review. They did make no changes. And the other thing, the other thing they've done is that, so they've created we've had no help from the government on the radio side of things for broadcast regulations. There's been no they haven't adapted to the changing times. And so, I mean, I think you got to look at this from a couple of different points, Matt. The first one is we're being gutted by big business that don't care about people. They just care about the bottom line.
Qualify that. Are you talking about the BCEs and the Rogers that are like, hey, whatever serves the common goal of the umbrella company? Like, if we
think when you're answering to shareholders and you're sitting down making a decision, looking at spreadsheets, you're less concerned about people and their existence, in the workforce than you are about the shareholders and your value in the business world. So that's what's happened to radio. So they consolidated, they cut with no consideration for the impact on the workforce, right? And then you got a situation where these businesses are lobbying the government to make changes based on the idea that these streaming services, and they've got a point. They definitely have a point. We're in tough. The competitive landscape is much different now than it ever has been, right? And it's harder to make a buck at radio based on competition. So how do you justify the rules and regulations that you hang over the heads of broadcast when streaming companies and satellite companies don't have to abide by any rules at all to do the same business in this country?
Fuck them.
It doesn't make any sense
here's
at all.
Here's the thing, and I'm passionate. Like, I'm getting Matt fired up. Matt, I love fired up Matt. Here's the thing. They don't care. They didn't care. They didn't care about the digital revolution, and they've been trying to sell themselves that they're going to be around much longer than the internet.
They do care about it.
They don't. They didn't.
I just don't know if
they didn't when it mattered. Like I remember 10 years ago going to the guys at Chorus, and like Rogers tried to hire us to start a podcast network for them. This is a true story. Keith Pelly, Scott Moore, Julie Adam, they all brought us in. They're like, hey, we want you to help us start this podcast network. Myself, Kevin Smith, the actor director guy, and the guy I was working with named Todd. Kevin came to town for it. We sat in front of Rogers, Kevin Smith, myself, and we said, hey, we want you to build this podcast network. And we're like, great, we'll do it. And they said, we think it'll be nice, but it'll never outrun radio. I'm like, and Kevin flat out said to him in this meeting, he said, dude, it's going to eat your lunch. Like, this is where you have to go and what you have to be and how you have to operate. You got to get the very best of people. You got to let them put it out, and you got to work with them. You got to monetize it. And we're like, that's cute. We're not going to do that. And then fast forward 5 years later, I leave Sportsnet 590 The Fan because I'm fucking done with radio. Zero interest in doing it anymore. Dead technology, dead industry. It's not on demand, not interested. And Julie Adam, the VP of Rogers Radio, came up to me and she said, we'd like to hire you for a different city. And I said, I'm not interested in doing radio. She goes, what are you talking about? And I said, you know what I'm interested in, Julie? I'm interested in creating something and doing content on a place and in a space where people are encouraged to do it and where they're going to be in 5 years. That was 5 years ago. I was having a conversation with someone about this morning. They called me about Bell turning off radio stations, which is like one of those things. If you're in radio, you're like, that's unbelievable. They wouldn't have just never shut it off.
I'm shocked.
And so I remember saying that to Julie Adam, and she is no longer in radio. She was fired 2 years ago because the radio industry sucks ass, right? So this is now 5 years in. This is 5 years, Crier Media in some inception or another. The three of us, along with 120 podcasts, along with 30 or 40 writers, have had a home to go and produce, do content. We're fully funded. Everything's good. We've got announcements coming out. That's why I've been traveling. And I'll tell you why things are so good here. Because we're really focused on the people. We're really focused on the content. And we're super fucking focused on making it work, right? Making it work for every single individual here, because I have a need. Matt has a need. You have a need. We all do. And that need is human in nature, where we say, hey, we want to feel purpose and go to work and do a great job for all the people that we're communicating with. That is not what Bell Media wants. That is not what Rogers wants. That is not what any major media outlet in this country wants. You know what they want? They want to keep that share price high. They want to keep their burn rate low. And they do. And they know. And here's the thing. And this is what today said.
It's money.
This is what today said. And Matt, I would love your thoughts on this. They said today, finally, what everybody's been saying for the past fucking 10 years and what I said to Julie 5 years ago when she asked me to move to Winnipeg. I think it was Winnipeg. She asked me. I'm like, I'm not going to Winnipeg. What they said was something I said years ago. It's over, especially if you're a shitty operator. It's over. If you're in traditional media, if you're Bell Media, that message you sent today was, we have no fucking clue where this is going. We're just going to cut bait. We're going to screw as many people as we can so that our investors in Germany know this is a fact. Our investors in Germany can get paid, and so our CEO can get his bonus. Now, the CEO, his name is Mirko Bibic. This is my friend Frank Gunn from AP. Got to follow him. He's a great follower. Put this tweet out today. Hard to miss these three stories side by side on the Toronto Star website. Mirko Bibic, president and CEO of Bell Media since January 2020, received $13.5 million in total compensation last year, up 20% or $2.45 million. They have lost a record amount of money this year. They have fired 1,300 people today. They fired 6% of their workforce. If that is not a dead industry with shitty leadership, only interested in one thing and one thing only, tell me otherwise. Because that's all I see today, Matt. That's all I see.
I wanted to sort of break this off into two problems because Loch did touch on it, and it does need to be acknowledged. And that's we have a radio problem and we have a news problem in this country. The radio problem is self-inflicted by radio and Canadians. And all of that is our own fault. The news problem is a problem. Getting journalism and journalists paid and the monetization of news, which has existed for a long time, has now been sucked up by Facebook and Google, and is looking to be corrected somehow down with Bill C-18 whenever that happens, and all the crazy stuff that needs to take place for that to happen. And of course, Facebook has decided we're going to turn off the news, and Google says we're going to squish the news, and you're not getting news, and all that stuff that is going on. But this signal from Bell today means, yeah, you know what? We're not going to be doing news. We're certainly not going to be doing anything funny, and sports is tremendously expensive. I've always thought that Canada couldn't necessarily afford to have two sports stations in a market. Now it's one sports station, and now it's none in some cases. So I think we need to look at those two problems separately. One of them is they're two separate conversations, but don't tell me radio doesn't work, because I just met a whole bunch of people from Radio Days North America, especially those who come over from Europe. And in North America, we don't look to Europe and some of the great stuff they're doing. They're doing incredible things. They're making money. They are serving their countries and their cities and their communities. Australia, still fantastic for radio. Things are okay. I mean, England, BBC still trucking along.
So is it just
shows
Canada?
You can do it alongside commercial.
It's big business, Dean.
No,
it's big business.
I know that. I know, but I'm asking.
This.
No, I know. I totally get it. But Matt's making a point here, and he's starting to get geographic, and I'm like, I start asking questions, right? And you're right. It is big business. It's publicly traded companies that have investor issues that want to make sure that they serve them and they get dividends. I get it. You're 100% right. But is it a geographic thing in this case? Because we seem to be in Canada, seem to be really good at royally fucking this up, while things are healthy otherwise.
But I'd like to suggest that, okay, so now we have highlighted the one issue. Yeah. We've kind of done it to ourselves, right? We've kind of screwed ourselves in radio. So radio needs to look at what we've done, whether you're owned by a big company or not. Look at what we've done to this business, and then go, okay, yeah, it makes sense that people are looking for content in other places because we didn't provide enough in a lot of markets, and we didn't expose it differently when we should have. We should have taken a chance. This happened in newspaper. Just happened in newspaper way quicker. You talk to guys, writers, they still think that Twitter was a problem. Like they're still mad at Twitter. Like I had a conversation, I think about 2 weeks ago with a guy that was in newspaper and he was still mad at Twitter. And I'm like, holy shit, man. And I saw this coming when I left Winnipeg and I was in Edmonton. Yeah. I saw this coming when Facebook and all these social media, I was like, I got to learn this shit, that I can't be that old dog in a meeting going, Facebook's a fad, and watching that guy get walked out with a box of his belongings 2 weeks later. Yeah. Like, I was like, all right, like, I got to learn about this. Oh, okay, we're going to do videos now. All right, what's this thing? Instagram? You know what I mean? Like, I've tried to. I shut the door on Snap, Flick, and fucking TikTok. I can't fucking do it, but because I got mad because there's too many of them now. But anyway, the thing about the business is self-explanatory. If you talk to anybody in radio, they're disillusioned about where we're at. I recently had some people over at my house. We had a dinner and got too many drinks in us. And I listened to them talk about the future, their future in particular. And I was like, what? I can't believe I'm hearing this from two people that are pioneers in our business. People are giving up on this business because of the frustrations they have of moving it forward in these big companies. Okay. And so you're losing good programmers and you're losing that momentum that I remember when I got into this business was exciting. You would have a meeting about what music to play and people were getting air checks and this business was fun and we were doing different creative things. I've tried to keep that alive on my own show and in our building with the locker room. But it is very hard to find in this business across the country. There's pockets of it, but you've got situations where people are disheartened. So that's the business. Radio did that to itself with the help of being owned by these big companies that care about the bottom line more than they care about anything else. Now, government involvement has hurt this business as well. And I think that this constant attack on that Bill, you brought up Bill C-18, Matt. I think the constant attack and this idea, this back and forth about whether or not that's good, and this veneer, this presentation that the government puts forward that we got to take care of the companies that are creating local content is all a bunch of shit. I saw that speech that Trudeau made the other day. That's bullshit. What he said about protecting, you can't tell me that that's your number one concern with Bill C-18 when the guys lobbying you are lobbying you about money, get rid of all my regulations. Because they're mad that they can't own more than 3 FMs in a market. They're mad about that type of stuff that will allow them to open up the business. They don't care about how they present news. Bell they just said that by letting 6 radio stations.
Well, let me put something on the screen. This is a note from Don Ellis, who I believe is involved in TSN Edmonton, TSN 1260. Good radio station. Good people work there. Apparently, good morning show that used to compete against my friend Lachlan Cross as of 9 o'clock this morning.
Dustin Nielsen had one of the best AM shows in the country.
So this is Don Ellis talking about the firing, saying a sad day for most of our sports media in Edmonton, Alberta today. Bell Media cut off TSN 1060 in the middle of a live morning show broadcast. That's a fucking solid move, isn't it? That's one of my favorites.
Cut it off while it was on the air.
Oh, yeah, 9 o'clock.
At least they didn't do the Vancouver thing where they played Green Day, Time of Your Life.
Time of Your Life, just to send
who
people
did
out of
that?
the building. Vancouver,
somebody needs
2 years ago.
I know they did that, but who said that was a good idea?
Ed Rogers. So anyway, this is the note that they put. We have news to share about changes to TSN 1260 changes. As of 9 a.m., June 14th, TSN 1260 is off the air. The realities of AM radio and the broadcast media landscape have made this change unavoidable. We want to thank our advertisers, partners, sponsors, who you're fucking, by the way, and everyone who has contributed to this station over the years, who you're fucking. But we especially want to thank you, our listeners, who you're also fucking. Thank you for welcoming TSN 1260 in your homes, cars, lives for so many. Now, here's the thing. That was a nice, thank you, welcome. Really appreciate it, Matt. Thank you, welcome. Everything's great. But, and words and works are not the fucking same. They're just not the same. So what does that tell you? Because to me, that's like, hey, thanks for everything. We're going to do all this anyway because we don't care. No?
Oh, wait a second. You're saying you could sell the station because you mentioned that you had sponsors and supporters.
That's what I'm saying. It's all in there. He's like, sorry to our sponsors, supporters, all of the listeners. Now, I know what makes a radio station successful. Correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen. Listeners, supporters, and outstanding staff. And money. He just admitted to having all three of those things in the thing. And he's like, but this is unavoidable. Are we smarter than
TSN stayed
managing
sports.
That stuff? Are you fucking kidding me? He goes on and on and on. And he's like, this is terrible. Oh, my God. I want to say sorry to all the people for all the reasons we were in business because we were doing so great. But things are really terrible. Like, that is a lie. He's lying.
That station
made money.
Was an outlier. It made money.
Yeah. Made a lot of money.
Yeah, and had huge profit margins because they had great personalities on the air.
Yeah.
They didn't pay anything for sports rights. They stayed out of putting the Elks or the Oilers on. They just did the talk, and they could bang on the team. And people in Edmonton, incredibly passionate fans who love their team, but they love the honesty about their team. So if you went to 630 Ched, you would never get the truth about the team. Glenn Sather ran 630 Ched Sports for many, many years in Edmonton, and did the same probably when it was on the other station as well. He was really in charge because if you didn't listen to Glenn, you weren't going to be getting the interviews with Coffey and Gretzky and Huddy and et cetera, et cetera. So that's why
pass.
That station did so well and cranked out just these great personalities. And I have a very hard time believing that statement.
Yeah, well, in the statement is filled with lies. I mean, let's just go through this again. Like, this is the thing. I think everybody that is responsible for putting this note together, it had to be the dumbest group of people on the planet. Where they talk about changes. You're not changing TSN 1260. You just shut it down. Realities of AM radio being impossible, and this is unavoidable. And then you go on to thank all your advertisers, partners, sponsors, and all the great people who work there. Are you fucking kidding me?
By the way, I want to point out Calgary and the Chorus radio station, which was Q107 on FM. They took CHQR 770 and moved it over to 107.1.
But they've been dragging their feet on a lot of those requests too, Matt. Like that's another
illegal too. By the way,
our government has a lot to do with what's going on here, right? Like the way that they have handled this whole thing, I think, and you know what, man, honestly, there are some things, and I don't even want to get into it because people, when we
why not? We're into it. We're like balls deep.
Because the problem is you can't. You're automatically thought of as anti-Canadian when you say that the Canadian content rules need to go away. And again, I literally got attacked on Twitter for a comment I made on this podcast probably 8 months ago, where I said the CanCon rules now I think work against the industry and need to be changed. And then all of a sudden I got people saying, why are you so anti-Canadian? It's not that I'm fucking anti-Canadian.
It's just that you turn off the radio every time Honeymoon Suite gets played. That's the problem.
And people won't admit it. But hold on, Matt. They won't admit it because they want to tell you that they're pro-Canadian, right?
Yeah. But they're the first people to turn it off when you play something Canadian.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So the same thing happens with our government. Our government has this message that they want to send to the public. We've got this bill, C-18, and we're working on it, and it's got some bugs in it, but what it's going to do is it's going to save the broadcast industry, and it's going to make the people that aren't paying to create content in this country, make them pay for it. That's bullshit. The only reason why they're doing it is because they've got these lobbying companies they've got companies that own broadcast in this country lobbying them to leverage those companies and give the money back to them. It has nothing to do with content. So
can we talk about that for a
fucking
sec?
saying it's about content. It is not about, no one gives a shit at the government level about who's creating content.
Nope.
They don't. It's
They care about
money.
how they can tax it, how they can make money from it, and how they can control it, and how they can use it for their own messaging and purposes.
And they look for opportunities to hang their hat on things and they'll do it. They'll go, you know what? These companies aren't creating Canadian content. We have to charge them for it.
It's never about that.
It's, by the way,
never about fucking Canadian content. It is always about the fucking money they think they can make from it.
Matt Cundill.
Bill C-11, by the way, is the one that's going to be affecting all that with what you're going to be playing. But today, got in my car, had my phone in my car, and I listened to WKTU, an iHeart radio station out of New York City. It runs just like the radio. It plays and acts and behaves just like the radio. It's a phone. I could listen to a podcast. I listened to Writing Class Radio today. The name of the episode is called Outsourcing My Orgasms. It's got some bad words perhaps in it, but why are we regulating the radio and the public airwaves with bad words?
And we need a bell in here. Where's our bell?
And it's on my phone. And so what? Like, guess what? Oh, well, we can't say the F word. Loch cannot say the F word on his radio station because my child might be listening. Well, your child is probably on this listening to Call Her Daddy. It's insane. Like, we have this crazy, and the other thing that's insane, why is all the music on FM? Yeah. And why is just talk like on AM? That is from 1974 or 5 when the CRTC made that up. We have all these FM radio stations. You can't put the sports on there. You can't put the news on there. The move that I was referring to earlier in Calgary, the CRTC said, yeah, you're not really supposed to be doing that. We'd like to have a word with you, which is probably the most work the CRTC has done in the last 10 years. It's absolutely insane. Dean, if we wanted to right now, we could buy one of those signals maybe from Bell. We could put all our podcasts on it. No, we can't because we said the F word.
Yeah. I had a conversation to that point with someone who works at the CRTC because I remember like about 9 months ago, I was kind of railing on them as a bullshit organization because they're just literally an organization of people who had cushy jobs at other media companies who then those media companies needed a man on the inside on the regulatory board. And Canada's regulatory board, the CRTC and the CBSC in Canada are literally just a bunch of old dogs who just look for a purpose and walk around and go, we don't like that, let's ding that guy. We don't like that, let's send them a letter. They're useless. They're like housewives of dumb friends of people in media. That's all they are. They're just washed up losers looking for a quick paycheck from the government. That is what the CRTC is. That is why they don't give a shit about any of the things that we're talking about here today. They sit back and they go, hey, yeah, but we get to decide what happens. So what did they do with that? They decided when the new regulations came out, and this is interesting to your point, which they had 23 years to work on. 23 years to work on. They decided, number one, status quo. How are we going to make radio better? No, we're not going to do anything.
We're not going to give them any advantage whatsoever in the competitive world that we live in. So good luck.
Which is great because that means we get to keep our competitive advantage. But then you have to look at what the government did to help them, right? So while they were sitting there doing nothing, while Bell, Rogers, all those radio stations, people that own traditional media, sat there literally trying to sell something that was dead. Like trying to sell dead tech, dead industry, dead technology, nothing on demand. While they were trying to convince everybody it was still viable and cool, they went and talked to the government with their lobbyists. And what they said to the government is, hey, listen, get the CRTC to regulate all those people out there like Dean, Matt, Lachlan, Jesperson, Adler, anybody doing content, because their competitive advantage is they can say the word fuck. And we don't want them to say that word because we're not allowed to say it, and people
they don't care about that word.
No,
it's not about that. They care about the money that is being taken away from traditional radio.
It's about the regulations, and the money is being taken away from traditional radio because people like us are allowed to say fuck, and we're allowed to have honest conversations that they're not allowed to have anymore because they're scared shitless of themselves because they're terrible operators of industry, fucking terrible. And here's the other thing: they're also valueless individuals with no character at all. And I can tell you that because every time I turn on the radio, there's a there's a Marine Land or a Marine World commercial, or they're taking advertising from some cuck who's like, vaccines are terrible, or some politician who's super irresponsible. They don't care where the money comes from. All they care about is propping up a dead industry no one talks about anymore. When someone says the word radio now, you know what I think of? I think of VCRs. I think of 8-tracks. When someone says newspapers, you know what I think of? A phonograph. That's what I think of. When someone says cable television, you know what I think of? Drive-in movies. It's over. And they did it to themselves. And they've got this regulatory body. Instead of making that industry healthier by allowing them to be authentic and deregulating, which is what they should have done.
Yeah, it's exactly.
They said, you know what? Let's regulate the internet. Okay, regulate the internet, because none of us are going to do that. And there's way more of us than there is of you. And I don't know how this works, but here's the beautiful part. There's 2 bills that are coming down where they're trying to regulate the internet. One is C11, the other is C18. C11 is a creator's bill, if I'm not mistaken, Matt. Is that not correct?
It's passed.
It's passed. Yeah, no, but it's going to take a while to get through, and they're going to figure out who's going to be, doing all the stuff.
But again, the CRTC has to figure that out, and thankfully it takes them 10 years to do anything.
Oh yeah, 23 actually. So nothing will probably happen.
If you could plunk it up on the screen, there's an actual, or you can just go Google it. There's a myths and facts page, because the CRTC has a call for requests for people like us to show up and give comments. But maybe we could just submit this show.
Yeah, we'll do it.
No, hold on. Don't comment. Stay away, because you're just going to get angry about being ignored. They're not going to listen to anything that the broadcasters outside of traditional media have to say, because they're not paid by us. We're not filling their pockets right now.
So if you go up and down the myths and facts sheet, it says we're not going to be regulating algorithms. We're not going to be regulating algorithms. Exactly. I do not believe them for 1 second.
No.
What they're going to say is, we're going to be promoting certain content, which means you're going to be fucking with the algorithm.
Yes.
But they're going. All they're going to be doing is shutting down anybody that doesn't live underneath what their so-called umbrella will be. Yeah. And they will look for ways to force you to the outside. I mean, it's already being done on social media.
But
look at how we're controlled. Look at how people that aren't boosting and paying for things on social media are shut down. Man, your posts, like in radio, if I put up something on Twitter, no one sees it. If I put up something on Facebook, no one sees it.
That's tech doing that.
We get hammered. And all that is you guys aren't paying us. You're not paying us. We're not going to show your shit. We're not paying you. And that's exactly what's going to happen when we end up dealing with another bill, like another bill, C11, C18, doesn't matter what the fucking number is.
Well, hold on.
You're not paying them.
Get to what those are.
You're not paying a tax. You're going to get hammered. You're just going to get shut out by them.
Let me get to what those are. Bill C11 is a creator's bill that changes the algorithm so it promotes Canadian content, so all things are not equal. So that's Canada's way and Trudeau's way of shutting certain information out of your feed. That's number one. And
we're also, very Canadian.
Also, you're going
to be very
regulated.
Canadian boys on here. You think we're going to get promoted?
No. Absolutely not, because of what we're saying. Which doesn't matter, because I don't need to promote it. We'll just pay for it, and we'll take the side door, because I don't give a shit. So number one, Bill C18 is interesting. C18, and this is why all these loser media outlets. By the way, if you're shutting down huge portions of your business, you're terrible at your job. Just want to put that out there. Like, these are people that don't know what they're doing anymore, nor do they care. But the whole idea behind Bill C18 here in Canada, and bear with me because this is interesting, is they want to make all the tech companies, Google, Meta, Facebook, all those companies, Twitter, TikTok, pay these media outlets in this country for the privilege of them putting stuff on their platform. And it is a forced thing. Now, the beautiful part of this, and Chris Biddle, an MP, shit on me the other day on Twitter, and I'm like, whatever, dude. Because I said, hey, listen, I'm really happy that Google and Facebook are saying, we're going to block the news to Canada. That's all we're going to do. Like, we're not paying you for the privilege of you using our stuff and costing us money. And I agree with that, because that's what an idiot does. An idiot says, yeah, sure, I'll pay you hundreds of millions of dollars so you can use my stuff. Like, that is not how it works. It's not how the world works. It's not how profit works. It's not how process works. It's not how this works. However, the government
is saving Canadian content.
No, they're not. They're
That's
using that.
They're
taking
saving
that
Canadian
money.
content,
Well,
Dean.
no, here's the thing.
That's
the
the
reason
fucking
why they're doing it is because these groups like Bell, Rogers, etc., have gone to the government cap in hand going, we're so poor. We have no money. Help us, please. And the reason they're doing that is because they're shitty operators of their business and they didn't see the digital revolution coming. So the government's like, sure, no problem. Then all of a sudden it's a tidal wave, right? You have people that are way bigger than their brands. This brand, us, way bigger than their brands. Joe Rogan, say what you like about him, way bigger than Bell, way bigger than Rogers, which is what in Canada, this socialist, beautiful socialist country we live in, and I believe it is a social democratic country, socialist democratic country, they're like, business is the most important thing. The brand is the most important thing. So you guys all know this. You guys know this as high performers in radio. What do they do when a performer becomes bigger than the brand? You're out to sea. Forget it. You're gone. Now, all of those performers have transferred into the digital space and everybody's doing a bang up job. And they're like, oh, we're in trouble. What can you do? And they're instead
There's
of
some
saying,
truth to what
can
you're
you
saying.
release us from the obligation of regulating our language and content? Can you release us from it? They're saying, no, we don't want to be released from it. We want you to kettle 34 million people instead. We want you to regulate them online.
That's
now,
exact because
how
they have
much
to
sense
give the
does that make?
perception, Dean. They have to give the perception that they're taking care of everybody.
Yes, they're not.
No, it's
They're
not
fucking
about
everybody.
money.
Yes. And
No.
you know who's responsible?
It's about climate change.
Media
We're
companies
gonna
and
save
this
climate.
government.
We're going to save the climate by taxing the shit out of you at the pumps.
Yeah.
But it's so weird to be like talking about monetizing the news. The news is the news. But the minute money gets involved, it doesn't really become news. It becomes sort of a trust thing. We've already had a run-in where the Liberal government handed out money to a lot of news organizations. Now they've taken money. If you're taking money from the government, how can you properly be reporting the news? That's so bizarre to me.
You're not. Ever.
No.
If you take money from the government, and by the way, happy to say our hands are clean, our conscience is clean. We haven't taken a dime, a grant, not a penny, and we won't.
We will not be
'Cause
taking
the
any money.
Second you do that,
It's over.
you're done. No one's going to believe a word you said. So here's a question for you guys. Where does trust factor into it? Because over the past 10 years, all the people on the internet have been pointing to Bell and Rogers and telling everybody they stole money from the government to pay their employees, and then they fired those employees and still took the money. They stole money. They don't curate narratives. They treat people like shit. So, Matt, I'll start with you, and we'll go to Lachlan. How much of this is their fault by treating people like shit and not reporting the news properly and trying to monetize it instead?
Well, a lot of the trust has to do with the fact they kept cutting news and also the way they would report news. News became very unsexy over the last, 15 years. I think really probably since 2007, age of acceleration, social media came in. We started to report it differently. We would make it shorter. We would make it kind of surface, wouldn't go too deep on stuff. We would let other people do the deep stuff. And I think a lot of people looked and listened to news and thought, hey, there's a little bit more here to this, but they were not getting it. They were only getting the surface level stuff. And I think that became common in and amongst the mainstream media. And that was sort of the beginning of the end of trust. But now there's money into it. Now you got some bills, C11, C18. We've got discussions about Facebook and Google. Now they're turning on and off the tap. Yeah. Trust has been eroded in a very, very large way. I will say, and I think this is why we've had an earlier discussion about being a little bit upset about turning off radio stations, legendary call letters, some great signals on the dial, and news stations, is that there's still a lot of trust on the radio. That's why people are upset, because radio still carries a very, very large trust factor. No matter what we think about Lachlan Cross on this podcast, there's a lot of people who listen and trust him every day. And radio is still the grand bastion of trust. News, it sort of slips down a little bit more, but radio still carries a lot of it. And I think that's why we're upset today.
Well, I didn't come up with this. This is something that I've heard countless times when you talk about the disintegration of news and what it meant and the integrity revolving around it. We used to have institutions, right? You used to tune into the 5 o'clock news or the 10 o'clock news, and you used to have the newspaper and the guy that wrote the column that you liked. And all that went away when first became a priority over right. There's now this rush in the new world that we live in to have the information first. For some reason, I don't know why people have such a boner for being the first one to tweet or, the first one to get that information out. So
because they're losers mostly.
That's part of it. I think that's part of the disintegration. I think also there has always been a trust issue in my mind for all levels of media, regardless of whether you're on AM, FM, TV, or whatever, because there's always been this conversation about how you look, how you present, and we're past that. And I think that's part of the confusion in the world that we live in now, because if I see a guy on television and he's wearing a suit, I don't look at the color of the suit and go, he's wearing a red tie today. I trust him more. Back in the day, that kind of conversation happened. And now we know it's all bullshit. Now we know that people are just people. And quite often, you can see through their attempts to be authentic. And I think that's a big part of the issue that we're dealing with today with news is that people are a little bit more aware.
Yeah.
Like they'll look at a situation now, or they'll look at somebody and go, I started to notice it in the last 5 or 10 years when people started to tell me that I was their news source. And at first I was terrified. I'm like, no, don't do that. But now I kind of get it, because people listen to the show and they know that I'm not full of shit, that I'm actually
trust,
that things are coming out of my mouth that I actually believe. And I think a lot of people that listen to consume, they listen to a podcast, they listen to the news, they listen to the radio, whatever it is that they're listening to or searching out to fill that information hole that they have in their lives. They might not understand why they're listening to something, but I think their people are desperately looking for authenticity now, and they're finding it in different places.
So to your point, there was a study that was done this year, and it was something like 29% of just Canadians. It wasn't a North American study. It was like a media and independent media study. 29 or 28% of all Canadians trusted mainstream media. They trusted traditional media outlets and traditional media brands. 72%. And I remember this number because I love it. 72. 72 Summit Series.
Paul Henderson,
72. 72% of people in Canada trust independent news sources. Now, here's why. And I found this very interesting. It had nothing to do with the brand when it came to trust. It had everything to do with the people. And it had nothing to do with the people when it came to mistrust, the 29%. It had everything to do with the brands. Now, the one thing that this country is struggling with when it comes to news and information is the idea that mainstream media outlets are telling you the truth. And the pandemic put that on fucking steroids, right? Because everybody was screaming at everybody, you can't trust them. You can't trust them for 3 years. So people on the left or right or people in the middle
doesn't matter,
took it to heart. And they're like, maybe we can't, because we're not getting accurate information about what these people are doing in Ottawa. We're not getting honest reporting about what's going on with the pandemic. We're getting misinformation and disinformation shoved in our faces by certain outlets. Media outlets and companies like the National Post, they serve a culture. They don't serve news and information. Same thing with the Sun. Same thing with Bell. Same thing with Rogers. They serve advertisers. They serve their relationships. So that has been unmasked over the past 3 to 4 years, and specifically in the last 3 because of the pandemic, because of all the shit that changed on a daily basis. People were wondering about trying to get first to post and giving us terrible information and doing it because, hey, who cares? It's just them. So now we're in a situation where the bottom is up and the top is down, and everybody's looking at people like us to tell them the truth. And so that move today, part and parcel, is their own fault because of what they have done and have not done in serving the people in this country honestly and with accountability. And so you got people like us, Adler, Jesperson, you, me, everybody else that's out there. Take away Rebel News and take away all the other disinformation that are pure disinformation pieces, because the landscape is a mess. But you have people, and even Rebel, trusted so much by their ridiculously stupid audience that's where that number comes from. 72% of us are like, for whatever reason, whatever we like or what we don't like, are so tired of the institutions that have been feeding us bullshit while collecting $13 million in shareholder salary and dividends just to fucking make us angry, just to fire 1,300 people today.
They were supposed to use that to pay staff.
And by the way, that 29% you were talking about, Dean, has now found its way down to the advertising level. And in podcasting, I was speaking to somebody at Radio Days North America, which was last week in Toronto, and somebody who runs a podcast agency in the States is finding, can you put this ad across these podcasts, but don't put it in any news podcasts. Not interested. Brand safety. We don't want to be a part of news of any sort. Just put it in, these categories. So, that's where the trust is. People don't even want to be associated with the news. So I wouldn't be surprised if somebody at Bell or Rogers has said, we're having a harder time selling these radio stations, advertising.
Well, I think the other issue too, I mean, take the consumer side of that, the sales side out of it too, and a little bit back to the people. The one thing that I've noticed when I don't listen to much traditional radio because I don't have time, if I'm being
honest. Even though you're on it every day.
Even though I'm on it, I don't hear a lot of it. But when I do occasionally flip on somebody to listen to what's out there, the thing that I'm hearing is this underlying fear. It's coming out of the radio. And where the one market that I hear it the most, because Dean will do this to me, I'd say about once every 2 weeks, he'll take his phone and he'll record a bit on the radio, and then he'll text it to me and go, "Oh my God, listen to this." And he flips around, I think, for his own humor. And he'll send, and you can just hear it. And it's hard to put your finger on it if you haven't been in this business for a long time. People are so fucking scared about keeping their jobs that it's getting into their head. When you have a bad leader, when you have somebody that you're worried about how they're going to consume what you put out there as a content provider, it gets in your head. If you're constantly going into work every day thinking you're going to get fired, that is going to be front of mind when you're sitting there trying to be creative and trying to be engaging. And that's something that I think that people might not be able to articulate. Why do you listen to that podcast and not that show on radio? It's because they feel there's this looseness to the content that we're providing on a daily basis on something like this podcast. And I hope my show on Cruise is also an example of that, where we come in every day and we're just trying to have fun and be as creative as possible. And we're trying to block out the outside world and the things that are happening in our own personal lives and our business lives, and try to entertain, to bring in an audience. And again, it's palatable. The one that I heard you sent me about 2 weeks ago, you sent me a break, and I was like, oh my God, you can feel.
It is so hard to listen to, Matt.
You could feel their fear.
And in Toronto specifically, it is a wasteland. And you go back like 10 years to when I was slinging dick jokes. When I was like, with my lasso, I was just out there going, "Hey, cowboy, let's go. Let's have some fun." None of that exists anymore. Like, none of it. And so I'm listening to, because
that's what we're missing in traditional radio. Someone able to sling dick jokes.
I was good at it.
It's funny.
Write that down, Matt, for your next conference.
Every program director, whenever they come into the radio station to introduce themselves, all they ever talk about is all the fun that's going to be had. We're going to have fun. This station's going to be fun. We're going to have fun. So why does it sound like you guys are running for your lives on the radio?
Well, I listened to this. This was like a CHR, and anybody understands CHR? It's like pop music. So I'm listening to a pop music station. Kids are in the car, and I'm listening, and these guys do a break, and I cannot. Oh no, I know what the break was. And it was and a break, by the way, is like when you stop between songs and you have a
Kardashians.
talk. So the host and the co-host were talking about the Kardashians and whether it was okay for the Kardashians' baby mama to be at the other baby mama's house for a pool party. And this break lasted like 9 minutes. It was 9 minutes debating whether or not Khloe should have shown up with Tristan and Tristan's other baby mama. And it was one of the more painful experiences I've ever had. And keep in mind, I've listened to radio shows where the person has had literally a nervous breakdown on the air. That was more fun to listen to than this. And it was not only scared, not only could you hear the petrification in their voices, it was like they stayed away from anything entertaining. It was almost like before the show, their program director wanted, okay, listen, you can talk about these 5 things, but don't make it entertaining. Don't make it compelling. Don't make it interesting. Just give the facts. And that is what every single person in radio does today. I know program directors that work with these people that say the same thing. We just tell them to go in, do the bare minimum, try not to fuck it up, and get off the air for the next person. That's literally the
here's
job
the
now.
other thing too. There's this weird thing about jumping into content that might actually be divisive. And again, the product that stems from the fact that we live in such a segmented world. So now
But that is
back in the day,
radio's fault in where we are today and why they're turning off radio stations.
Exactly. Like, and I think the other thing too is because of how divisive it is, we don't know. And listen, we've gone through stages of that on this podcast about what we should and shouldn't do, right? Like we've had conversations openly on the podcast about whether or not we should be covering a topic. We've had them behind the scenes as well, Dean. Yep. Just dealing with the Dean Blundell podcast. And I've had it. I've had stuff in my head about what we've gone through the last couple of years. So I feel for these people where you can hear the angst and you can hear the fear in their voices. We had a conversation today on the show, and I said, Grant opened up his Facebook and he saw a post of somebody that he, like, not a friend, but somebody that in his circle. Mm-hmm. And it was somebody had commented on,
just pick your nose.
They can't believe
you just picked your nose right in the middle of that break.
It's a little itchy. I got to do a little hair trimming, I think. So anyway, it was a post and it was unbelievable about how they can't believe that the government is intentionally starting forest fires in Canada to propagate and to
climate change,
push their climate change agenda. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, like that's a thing. And he goes, yeah, but it's a small percentage of the audience that believes that. I said, well, let's test that theory out. So it's 7:00 in the morning. We went on the air and he read the Facebook post. Yeah. And I said, if you believe that somebody is out there intentionally starting these forest fires in Canada, I'd like to talk to you. And I'm not sure I would have done that 2 or 3 years ago in the heat of COVID. Like, and we got a couple of guys that called in, and if you listen to our podcast today that we post every day, which is a regurgitation of our...
Did they go full Berta on you? Yeah, they're doing it, dude. They got a little guy,
dude.
The libtard running around with a gas can. They're doing it.
And I said, here's what I said to the guy. I said, listen, here's where I think it doesn't work for me, because if somebody came to my door and said, "Oh, honey, Justin Trudeau's at the door, and he wants you to go deliberately start forest fires because people don't believe in climate change as much as he wants," I'm pretty sure it would get out.
Pretty sure there'd be a smoking gun or someone willing to go, for this.
You think the government is that organized? They didn't even bother with
That's what I said. They don't even know how to run a fucking country.
They didn't even...
You think they're organized enough to get a bunch of people to burn half of Quebec down?
It took 25 years for a radio review for new regs.
And then they didn't do anything. They went, we think everything's okay.
Is that why? Does Canada have a problem? like, I love the country and we all gloss over it and stuff. Like, media here sucks. It's literally like it's almost communist what they're doing with media. We're super divided. Our teams haven't won a Stanley Cup. Like, I just watched the Vegas Golden Knights the other night win a Stanley Cup in their 6th year of existence. Their 6th year. And I don't know, like, maybe it's a Canada thing, Matt. I have no idea. But this is like, it's almost like we're just really good with staying mediocre. Is that not kind of the feeling that I got?
We're a pretty conservative bunch, and I think you and I have had a conversation a few times about, ad buyers jumping into this space and trying this new podcast advertising thing that's going on.
Yeah.
And it's very tepid. But down in the US, no, they're all, listen, when this show is downloaded, the ad spots will be filled down in the States. In Canada, it's going to be super quiet because it's a super conservative country. We're not really sure about that thing. When it comes to the Stanley Cup, and I think that's where you wanted to go here, Dean, because, I listen, in 1993, I think I went to a Stanley Cup final. No, I was Gary Bettman's first year, and he was hanging around. I think he may have presented the cup to the Montreal Canadiens. He did it once, and then he has not presented the cup to a Canadian franchise since that moment. And I watched this go on for years and years. And usually it was just between the Canadians and the Leafs about who would win the next cup. And it was going to be the Canadians, and the Leafs are going to be horrible forever. But it began to become a pattern. And now it's 30 years since a Canadian team has won the Stanley Cup. And I've sort of thought about the reasons about why this is. And there's a number of reasons. One is the free agency market. You can't lure free agents to Canada the way you think you can. Players don't want to play in Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton, possibly Vancouver. Montreal is its own animal. You've got a language situation there. Hockey players are coming up. They're generally bringing wags. That's a cute expression for wives and girlfriends.
Yeah,
that's right. And so do you want to abandon your wife or girlfriend in a cold Canadian town while you go on a business trip to Tampa, Anaheim, Philadelphia, perhaps Phoenix? Or, do you want to just live in those places, often tax-free, depending on the state that you're in, and just not be under media scrutiny? It's kind of nice if you're a hockey player, not getting spoken about on the radio station. Not that we have that problem anymore in Canada in some markets, but to have that media scrutiny that goes on. Yeah. Listen, if you play for the Montreal Canadiens, page 3 of the Journal de Montréal is going to give you a grade. You played A, B, C. You got a D for the way you played last night. The media scrutiny is really a thing. And you know what? Maybe it's just nicer playing in Las Vegas and doing 1 trip or 2 trips to Toronto where you can invite your friends and family. And by the way, you ever find it a little bit odd that teams come in and beat Toronto? Those players are trying a little bit harder when they're playing in front of friends and family back home. So I thought it was kind of like a conspiracy theory at one point. Now I think it's the real deal. Players stay away from the media scrutiny. The wives and girlfriends, you don't have to leave them in the cold, and the tax situation.
How about also, and you're 100% right, like it comes down to personal choice. It's no fun here in the winter. But just a quick aside, what I loved about Vegas winning in their 6th year of existence, while the Maple Leafs are like half a century out and no closer to it at all, and they had to blow some stuff up this year. And same thing with the Oilers, the two best players in the world, same thing. But how about, and I laugh at this, but how about the idea that half of the city of Vegas didn't even know that Stanley Cup was going on? Like half the city. I was there for like 2 rounds of the playoffs for business. And it was like you wouldn't even know that there was a game going on out on the strip after the game. Before
I think
the
a win will help, though.
Oh, for sure, it's going to help. But it was like, and watching how they embraced it in the States, watching, and it feeds back, to the mediocrity question, how we're just kind of okay existing as Canadians. And it really gave me pause for thought when I watched Stone lift up that Stanley Cup. And, he's been there for a couple of years. And then I did a little reading, and what really gave me pause for thought, Las Vegas has the most Canadians on any NHL roster out of any team in the NHL, 24 of them, almost
including
entirely Canadian. And I'm like, oh, they get it. They're like, to be successful, you got to go to the States. You got to go down. Like, if you want to win something, if you want to enjoy your experience, you can't stay here. You have to go down there.
Like Neil Young.
Yeah, Neil Young, dude. Like we've been doing a ton of business in the United States with this other portion of our business, and obviously something we're going to talk about in the next couple of weeks, which is why we were with Benfica out in Portugal this last week as well. But like you get when you
Thanks for the invite.
yeah, you're welcome. You next trip. When you go down to the States, you're like, this is why everybody comes here to do business, because Canada is full of mediocre assholes.
Well, it goes back to what Matt was saying. I think it's that conservative sort of streak that we have. I would like to correct you both on your idea of where we're at with the NHL and why Canada hasn't won a cup. It is a conspiracy theory.
Oh, it is? Okay, sorry. I'd
Gary
love to hear it. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Both of you guys have
This
your
is
heads
the same guy
completely
who
up your
was
asses. He doesn't fucking want, honestly, he doesn't want Canadian teams to win. So he has done it. The league is fixed. And Gary Bettman is behind he's the puppet master.
That makes no sense.
Well, you're going to have to deal with
No,
it. It's happening.
Why would
I'm sorry.
No, listen, what does he want more than anything? He wants big TV ratings.
Yeah.
You don't get big TV ratings with Florida and Vegas. You get big TV ratings with Chicago and Toronto.
This is the
Boston.
league he wants.
No,
this is the league he wants.
No,
yes,
no.
it is, Matt.
He wants those teams for the 82 games in the regular season. He doesn't want these teams to do well in the playoffs because you're going to get a low TV number. He wants a high TV number. He wants Boston, Chicago,
fucking
Montreal, Los Angeles.
The salary cap. Why hasn't he fixed the salary cap? He has made it impossible for Canadian teams to draw big names up, right? He doesn't move it.
Everybody has the same rules. It's got to be the weather and it's got to be the taxes. It's got to be a huge portion of it, right?
He's fixing the league.
Weather wags.
He's fixing the league.
Yeah, because all the hot babes are down south.
By the way, I thought the funniest thing last night was on Twitter was everybody from the markets that care about hockey. Yeah. So we heard from Dwayne, the two goalies and one Mike.
Yeah.
I think he
Buffalo.
He was talking about Jack Eichel and everybody in Toronto. Another round of Phil Kessel. Was it Ottawa who was talking about Mark Stone? Like, I got such an education about where all these players had played before from all the bitching and moaning going on. It was outstanding.
You know what? I was disappointed, and I'm kidding him.
Eichel and Kessel were the two stories of the Vegas win, by the way. That was Kessel's third cup, healthy scratch. Afterwards, he trolled the entire city of Toronto, where he's like, hey, say hi to the people in Toronto. This is my third cup, and I didn't have to do shit today. And I'm like, that's awesome.
And let's not leave out Paul Maurice, who left Winnipeg and then took Florida the distance.
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, can I add one more thing quickly?
Please.
Is that I am so happy, and I said this morning, I'll repeat it. I'm so happy that we've kept a cup out of the Tkachuk family. And just as long as that can continue to happen. His dad played 700 years in the NHL, and he's got two kids now playing in the NHL. One of them is a royal asshole, and the more I see the Tkachuks get to the finish line and then not be able to raise the Stanley Cup, the better I'll sleep.
Yeah. I don't mind that either. Yeah. I think that's a good one. Speaking of you sleeping well, you sleeping better than that now that Trump got frog marched into a courtroom and charged with 37 counts of espionage, which we all said would happen. You said it wouldn't happen. Don't change your story.
It wasn't going to happen. I said he's not going. Is he in jail? Is he in jail? Is he behind bars right now?
He's going to be.
No.
Yes, for up to 400 years.
Let it go.
I'm not letting it go. It was one of the great days of my life. And I was in Portugal and I'm watching it on my phone at Benfica Stadium. I'm like, and I'm said to the marketing guy, I go, hang on. Trump is being marched. He just got indicted and he's being taken into the courthouse. Did you guys see the video? Did you see the video of him walking in?
Yes.
There are no lawyers that will represent him. So he went in without a lawyer, which is absolutely hysterical. He went in and got charged with 34 counts, another 3 counts of something else. I remember, but 34 counts of basically stealing and trying to sell and mishandling really important government secrets. People died to keep secret, right? That's what top secret confidential
let's be
information is.
careful.
What's that?
Because people actually tune in for news here. Is he being charged for trying to sell this shit?
Yes, sir.
Is he?
100%.
All right.
So that's why
that's not.
And
that's not headline
news. Did you see the pictures
right now?
of all
We're
the
not
boxes?
saying that.
No, that's exactly what he did.
In his toilet. I saw the one in his toilet.
It's like, and it was perfect because the dude's like in his 70s, right? And it's exactly how my grandparents store their things as well, where it's like you got 40 boxes in the shitter. You might have like 10 boxes like stacked up in the corner of the living room. And it was like, and there were hundreds of boxes. And like when we heard about the raid, we're like, oh, it's a couple documents, a couple file folders. There were hundreds of boxes lined up in his bathroom. Like that's where he was keeping them safe. And I'm like, that's just a senile.
They won't look in here.
But he is under not just scrutiny. He is going to jail. He is going to jail.
He is not.
Yes, he is
going to jail.
You don't get charged with 34 counts of espionage which is like as the former president. The former president got charged with espionage.
I can't
against his own
country. I can't explain that country, but that it's like Bill Cosby is planning a tour.
I know, dude. I didn't say
how many women did he rape? He raped like
hundreds.
OJ played golf this morning in Vegas.
Yeah, I know. It's unfair.
Okay, it's not. It's a different world down there. Money,
but this is prestige. This is something that nobody thought would happen. Is my point. Like you said, it wouldn't happen.
No, yes, I said he wasn't going to jail. Loch. I said I always go back and roll the tape. Loch. I always said you're
Loch.
You're drunk.
You're drunk.
Honestly, I never said he was going to not get charged.
Did you enjoy it?
He's good.
Let's go. Let's just go.
No, I don't care.
You didn't like watching him go to jail. You didn't like watching him walk in all sullen, sad, with his tie that was way too long and his fucking pants that were too big, pulled all the way up to his tits. You didn't enjoy that. I loved it. I
got a picture today of somebody when he was leaving. He was stopped at a stoplight, and they had their phone like this, and then they gave him the bird.
Yeah.
And then he's looking out the window going. That I found wildly entertaining.
I gotta get this picture. Was that today?
Yeah.
Trump finger.
Somebody sent it to me.
Oh yeah, I gotta find it. Dude, you gotta find it. I gotta watch it. Matt, did you care? Did you enjoy that? I know you're pretty apolitical, but come on, that was incredible, wasn't it?
Why is it that they give him all this TV time? Because it makes him look so presidential. You know, and why is he always? Why does he take a trip to New Jersey right after he gets arraigned? Like after that happens, I think he wants the cameras to follow him all the way throughout the CNN broadcast day. Yeah, because all they're doing is they're making him look presidential because he's got a motorcade, he's got the Secret Service with him. Yeah, I think they're feeding right into what he wants. Is he going to?
Yeah, I think he does want a lot of this stuff because it gets him back into the news cycle.
And then the day finishes with a rousing speech in front of his people, right?
Yeah, and by the way, low energy speech. Like that last one was low energy. He's like he just was reading off a teleprompter. Like he didn't have any gusto like he used to have, and he knows. Like that's one of the things I love the most about him is that he's giving up all the details on Truth Social. He put this up today. I gotta show it to you. It's incredible. He's
basically done that though
but he's like admitting to it.
He's been doing that for years.
He's basically admitted to it. He put this out today, 2 hours ago. Many people are saying the theft of nuclear and military secrets is a very serious crime. That he's admitting it in the first gate. And he says that is why, as America's favorite president, I enforce the USA's classified documents law powerfully and strongly. And that is why when I asked my loyal aide, Walt Nauta, who also got charged with espionage, to pack up my personal papers before I left the White House, I am confident he did not place any nuclear secrets in the box. As a Navy man, Walt knew that it would be illegal and could even get me in trouble. Now, Biden's radical DOJ alleges that Walt did this, but I don't believe them. He just admitted to it. He just said that that's what Walt did. So I don't know. He's just selling out Walt and selling himself out every time he opens up his mouth. And I can't believe you weren't more excited by him going to jail.
Totally put that tweet out.
Yeah. Truth Social.
He totally put that Truth Social post out to sell out his aide.
Totally.
He's just hung him out to dry. That's what he does.
And admitted to it. And admitted that there was top secret nuclear military.
Me. Walt did it. He's admitting to the crime, but then selling Walt down the river. That's all that is. Yep. He is the biggest piece of shit on the planet.
Yeah, without question.
I think everyone knows it, and I think that's what we all need to leave here today with is that he's just a raging piece of shit. That's all this is.
That's what I hear. Anyway, thanks for doing this, boys. It was a lot of fun.
Hey, thanks for keeping me to the end.
Matt
Yeah,
Cundill.
usually we ditch you.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I feel bad taking his time, right? Like he's busy. He's like doing all of our podcasts. He's doing all the Sound Off Media Network podcasts. He's got his own podcast network. He's our podcast guy. So I'm like, hey, do you want to jump in and talk about media today? And he's like, you're goddamn right I do. I want to talk about radio. And I'm like, good, because you're in radio.
I forgot to send a message in the private chat.
Oh, there it is. Thank you. Yeah.
Dump Cundill.
There should be just a button for that.
Matt Cundill, your social handle, please, because you didn't put it in the Chiron.
It's at Matt Cundill. I should have put it in the
You should have. Yeah, Sound Off Media. Go to Sound Off Media. Is it soundoffmedia.ca or soundoffmedia.com?
It's soundoff.network.
Okay, soundoff.network is where you can find them.
Yeah.
Just Google him, Matt Cundill, Sound Off Media Network. If you're looking to add a
He'll
podcast,
come
you
up.
want to do a podcast,
He's out there.
the beautiful part of this, man, is that Maureen Holloway, Charles Adler, the biggest names that have moved on from traditional spaces into this space that are experiencing successes, they all go through that man, Matt Cundill. So make sure you join him on Twitter. Give him a follow. He's a very
He
good
has
man.
a beautifully, perfectly round head.
Yeah.
Which is
Very
annoying.
English.
Should I be wearing a hat for these things?
No, you look great.
I do, just based on because I don't want people going, oh, why do we have an alien being on the podcast? Like that guy's clearly just visiting.
Yeah.
Why is he on? Because I got a misshapen head.
You do.
So I try to distract people with the cap. You got a beautiful melon, Matt.
You do. It's
Keep it
gorgeous.
shiny, buddy. Keep it shiny.
Do you cream that thing? You put a little Nivea on there? You put a little lotion?
Just a little
Cream
just a little
that
makeup for the
thing.
light there. It's all good.
Hey,
There's a drop.
cream your head, bud? Hey, bud, you cream that head of yours?
Oh, that's good.
You look awesome. Anyway, great to see you, Matt Cundill.
Thanks,
for doing
man.
this, brother.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Good to see you, Matt.
Bye-bye.
Buddy.
Bye.
Take care. Matt Cundill, ladies and gentlemen, Sound Off Media Network. Thanks for doing this, dude. Great to see you. Loch and Cross 957 cruisefm.ca at Loch and Cross.
We should tell people that the sporadic nature of the podcast, because a lot of people, like almost every day, people are reaching out to me because they enjoy this in their lives and they miss it when we're not around as regularly as we have been in the past. I'm just hammered at work right now. We don't need to get into it, but there was some changes. And I'm doing a lot more than I would normally have done, which has gotten in the way of doing this on a regular basis. And then Dean also has had numerous developments business-wise and personally, which have interfered with a regular rotation of podcasts.
Are you talking
from the
about a
Dean
chick?
Glendale
You're
show.
talking about a woman. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't need to touch on
I'm
it.
glad.
I mean, I know how private
I'm
you
very
are.
private.
So anyway, that it's both of us sort of combined, and we have tried on several occasions to do this. I think we're gonna talk on the weekend about putting together a plan.
Yeah.
But I would like to try to at least do one a week for the next month or so if we can. Until things calm down for the two of us, and then if we can put together a plan for the fall, which is what we're talking about doing, you know what I mean? That I'd like to be more consistent with our appearances.
Yes.
And so would you.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what Loch is trying to explain is that life gets crazy sometimes. And over the past, I would say 5-6 months, I've gotten involved in with Crier Media, with this company, crier.co, go there. Some other business, and that other business sits with Crier Media. We've got some announcements to make in the next little bit. So it's going to take a couple of months to get everything together. We're really excited by where we are. We're excited by the business that we're doing. We've got some tremendous partners. We've made some tremendous additions. We're going to be making more. But this is very important to me. So what we had to do is go back to the drawing board a little bit. When I say go back to the drawing board, it meant, hey, we need to take a knee so I can go do the business of business and then come back and get to the business of doing this when we reorganize. So what that means is Lachlan and I are going to be sporadic over the summer. We're going to try and get in. We're going to have a bunch of different people in.
But it's also me too, right? Like, and Dean and I don't hate each other. We're not fighting. The podcast isn't ending.
Are people asking you that if we're fighting or we're talking to each other or something like that? Is that?
Yeah, that's come up.
I got that today from somebody in the network. They're like, hey, you and Lachlan okay? I'm like, yeah, of course. Why? Well, you guys have to do. I said, dude, he's like busy as F. He's taken on a ton of work at his job, and my job has evolved and changed, and we've taken on a couple of new businesses with what we do. And so it's just been functional. Like we talk all the time. And what we're going to do is we're going to come back and relaunch closer to the fall while we work out the kinks and come up with a schedule. But the goal here obviously is to get more consistent, and that's what we'll do. And we'll get bigger shows, and we've got a studio.
I love
to prepare, all
doing
that stuff.
this.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of it. And I think I've become a better broadcaster from my involvements in this show over the last couple of years. And I thank you for letting me continue to come on here and be an asshole for whenever you do it. Right?
I need someone to be that asshole so that it takes the heat off of me.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes. By the way, the next time we chat, which might be next week, because you got a funeral on Friday. You lost a close friend. So condolences. I would like to talk about something that I learned on the weekend from putting my grandmother to rest. And I'd like to pass that along. Interesting story about a trip through Western Canada to spread the ashes of my grandmother who passed away at 92 just before COVID.
Yeah,
So
I'd love to hear it. You and I talked about it yesterday a little bit, but I mean, it was a heartfelt thing, right? You love Granny, and she was awesome, and she passed away during the pandemic, or like just when it started.
Just before the pandemic, she passed away.
Yeah, dude, let's celebrate her next week. Once we get back on the podcast, we'll do it on Monday. But appreciate you being here, brother.
Awesome.
Lachlan
Good
Cross.
to see you,
Good
man.
to see you too. 957cruisefm.ca in Edmonton. You can
Good
listen
luck
to me
in back east with the funeral
Thank you.
and all that. Okay,
I
man?
appreciate that.
All right, I've been thinking
I
about you.
appreciate that, buddy. Thank you. Lachlan Cross. That's what friendship's for. Yeah, that funeral is going to be a tough one. And I'll tell you about it real quick, because the man who passed is absolutely deserving of a minute. His name was Scott Bodnerchuk, and he was one of my best friends, and I've known him since 14. And radio guy. We were just talking about radio. And Scott was a sales guy at Rogers for a long period of time, sales manager. And I met him through my dad. My dad hired him. He was in radio, Alberta, when I was like 14 years old. And there's this cool dude that my dad hired that would come around and bring us presents, take us to hockey games, just treat us nice. And he became really good friends with my dad. Life happens. You lose touch. And 6 years ago, when I was in trouble, drinking, Scott Bodnerchuk called me and he said, "You're not doing good. And I know it. And I'm coming to get you." And he did. And he saved my life. And that was 6 years ago. And Scott passed away last week. It was, I think, the day we landed in Portugal for work. And the gentleman didn't just save my life. He saved the lives of hundreds of people, helping them with their drinking, helping them to get off of the train that they were on to destruction. And he lived it. And he gave of himself to other people so that other people could live. And he lost his life at 62 suddenly. And the details don't matter. But it was a natural thing. And it's hard to process, right? When you lose somebody who has helped save your life, your kids' lives, your family's lives. We all have those people in our lives. And man, oh man, there's beauty in chaos, and there's comfort in pain. And I experienced that last week. I experienced it in the memory of this gentleman who changed the course of my life because he loved me enough to come and tell me that I was fucked up, and who saved my kids' lives by virtue of saving mine. And here's the truth. As sad as all these things are, we're never guaranteed tomorrow. No one is. You're not guaranteed tomorrow. I'm not guaranteed tomorrow. That could happen to anybody, where you just don't wake up in the morning at the age of 62 with grandchildren and children and relationships. Sometimes it happens. And I used to be really bad at this. I used to be really bad at death until I understood it. And I understood that it's coming from everybody. And we need to celebrate those memories, right? We need to celebrate those people instead of feeling like, woe's us. Celebrate the differences. These people who we lose make a difference in our lives. And then to honor them, you need to keep going. You need to be positive. You have to affect change where you can affect change. For the people that are still here, the people that you love, because it's coming for you. It's coming for me. And that's the beautiful part of death, right? Memento mori. We all die. So get busy living. Get busy living and loving. Get busy helping other people. Get busy being the best version of yourself with the people that you love the very most. Because this is And no one has to say sorry, and you're all filling up the comment section. Don't be sorry. Scott was beautiful, and he still is beautiful, and he occupies a beautiful space in my life and my family's lives. And we're going to take a couple days to celebrate the man. But celebrate people while they're alive. I celebrated Scott while he was alive. We had great talks. Last conversation I had with him was a couple weeks ago. I love you, I said to him. He told me the same thing. And I'm comfortable. But you might not be, right? You might have those relationships in your lives where, you know, you lose people suddenly and you didn't get a chance to say something to them before they left, like you love them. And that is the opposite of fear, that word, love. So you got nothing to be afraid of when you say that to somebody and you truly mean it. And when you experience it, because we get to do that every day because we're still here and you might not be here tomorrow. And that is the part that made me grateful, is that I'm still here and I have a chance to celebrate the people that we've lost, as you do too. So as terrible as these things are and as tough as life can be, do yourself a favor. Respond well in the memory of those people. Respond well for yourself. Take your values, take your virtues, and wear them. And change lives around you. There is no fruit on this planet that is better than being of good character and acts for the common good. And when someone walks into your house and grabs you by the scruff of your neck and tells you he loves you and then takes you to AA and changes your life for you and with you selflessly, what a gift. What a gift. So I'll celebrate that gift. And I wanted to tell you about my friend Scott today. And I wanted to share that with you because you are going through the same stuff. Everybody does. It's immutable. We all die. So live, love, enjoy, and tell people. Tell people you love them. Tell people how important they are to you. Lift those people up that are around you. Do it every day. Don't stop. Never stop. Just love. Have a great day. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Really appreciate it. Special thanks you to our friends over at CanTorque, Canada's assembly tool experts, making rugged, hardworking, beautiful torque wrenches. Canada's leading industrial tool experts, giving you the best in sales, service, rentals, calibration, maintenance, and custom fabrication of industrial torque tools, baby. No matter the scale of your bolting project, they have your solution. CanTorque.com for more information. Today, my friend Colin Livingston is standing by. You can check out his latest blog on racing because he and Alex Tagliani have been racing their little buns off all across Canada in the Pinty's NASCAR series. So check it out at crier.ca. And if you need a torque wrench for the nuclear application, or maybe you need it in the metal industry, steel industry, maybe it's railroad, forestry, doesn't matter. If it's big and you have a fastening or loosening solution that you need dealt with, they have it. Go to cantorque.com, Canadian made, Canadian owned, and Canadian manufactured. Also, kivlaw.ca. Top criminal defense attorneys in Southern Ontario. St. Catharines criminal defense law experts want you to get your life back. They know criminal defense law. You need legal help 24/7. Go to kivlaw.ca for more details today, or just send my friend Robert a note. If you're in Southern Ontario, you're up against some legal issues, don't represent yourself. That's for the movies. Go to kivlaw.ca or email Robert yourself, kivlaw.ca, or Robert at kivlaw.ca as well. And we're brought to you by Gitch, luxury branded underwear, boxer briefs made in Canada for Canadians, engineered for any level of performance as well as everyday life. Gitch3 is your promo code. Buy 3, get 1 free, and you can check out tons of different colors. edsfineimports.com is where you go. When you check out, you use promo code GET3. You'll send you a free pair. You got orange, red, purple, black. I think there's yellow now. And trust me, these are barely there, super soft, sprint through your day fabric made for every level of performance. Go to edsfineimports.com, order a pair, tell them I said hi. That's the way you do it. I told you to go buy Gitch. Now go buy Gitch from Ed. Thanks for being part of the show. Really appreciate it. Not back on Friday, back on Monday. So we'll see you all then. Really appreciate you all being here. Have a wonderful day. Be good to each other. Tell people you love them, especially the people that you love. Be kind to others. Memento mori. We all die, but you're not dead today. Go have fun. Thanks. Bye.